The mud between your toes is cool, but the air is already beginning to shimmer with the promise of a brutal heat. You stand on the bank of the great river, the Hapi, looking out over a landscape that is both your mother and your master. In your hand, you clutch a wooden sickle tipped with serrated flint, and in your gut, you feel a familiar, gnawing pressure. The scribes are coming. They will come with their papyrus rolls and their measuring ropes, and they will count every grain of emmer wheat you have bled for. If the yield is short, if the river was too low or the locusts too hungry, it won't be the gods who punish you first. It will be the heavy wooden staff of the overseer. This is not a land of golden myths and static statues. This is a land of sweat, grit, and the eternal struggle to turn black mud into life. You are a farmer in the shadow of the pyramids, and your day has just begun. The sun, the great god Ra, has not yet cleared the horizon of the eastern desert, but the world is already awake. You rose from your reed mat while the stars were still visible, moving quietly so as not to wake your children in the cramped, mud-brick house you share with your extended family. Your breakfast was simple, the same as it was yesterday, and the same as it will be tomorrow. A thick slab of coarse, gray sourdough bread and a draught of cloudy, protein-rich beer. You can feel the grit of the sand in the bread, a result of the stone grinding bowls your wife uses until her knuckles are raw. It wears down your teeth over the years, a slow erosion that marks every person of your station. But the beer is cool and filling, enough to sustain you through the first few hours of back-breaking labor. As you walk toward your plot of land, the Black Land, you pass the towering white walls of a local noble's villa. Inside, there are gardens and cooling pools, but out here, there is only the damp earth. The smell of the Nile is everywhere, a thick, vegetal scent of rotting papyrus, wet silt, and life. To anyone else, it might be pungent, but to you, it is the smell of survival. Last year, the inundation was perfect. The river rose until it kissed the edge of the desert, depositing a layer of rich, dark silt that is softer than any fabric. But the water has receded now, leaving the fields thirsty. Your first task is the most grueling, the shaduf. You stand at the edge of the irrigation canal, facing the long wooden pole balanced on a vertical crossbeam. At one end is a heavy ball of dried mud, and at the other, a leather bucket. You pull the bucket down, plunging it into the murky water. Your muscles scream as you fight the weight, using your entire body to lift the water up and swing it into the higher channel that feeds your thirsty crops. You do this hundreds of times, thousands. The rhythm becomes a prayer. Down, dip, lift, swing. Down, dip, lift, swing. The water splashes against your shins, a brief, cooling mercy against the rising sun. You watch the water flow through the narrow mud arteries you carved with your own hands, soaking into the roots of the emmer wheat and the barley. Without this constant, rhythmic theft of water from the river, the desert would reclaim this land in a matter of days. The red land is always watching, waiting for the black land to fail. By mid-morning, the heat is a physical weight on your shoulders. You move from the irrigation channels to the fields themselves. Your son, barely 10 years old, follows behind you. He is learning the way of the plow. You guide the 2 weary oxen, their horns decorated with simple tassels to ward off evil spirits. The wooden plow is light, designed not to turn the soil deeply, which would lose moisture, but to scratch the surface just enough for the seeds. You sing to the oxen, a low, rhythmic chant that your father sang to his beasts. You tell them that the work is almost done, that there will be straw and rest when the sun reaches its zenith. It is a lie, and the oxen seem to know it, but they move nonetheless, their heavy hooves sinking into the soft earth. You stop for a moment to wipe the stinging salt from your eyes and look across the valley. In the distance, rising like white flames against the blue sky, are the great tombs of the ancestors. You have never been inside them, and you likely never will. but you spent 3 months of the last flood season hauling the limestone blocks that built them. When the Nile overflows and the fields are underwater, the Pharaoh calls and you must answer. It is the labor tax, the corvée. You remember the taste of the dust in the quarries and the way the sun reflected off the white stone until you were nearly blind. You remember the taste of the onions and radishes they fed you in the labor camps. It was hard work, harder even than this, but there was a strange pride in it. You were building something that would last forever, a house for a god. But now, back on your own land, that pride feels distant. The god king needs his tomb, but your family needs this barley. A shadow falls across the field and your heart stutters. It is not a cloud. There are no clouds in this sky. It is the village scribe, accompanied by 2 guards carrying stout papyrus reed staffs. They are dressed in clean white linen that makes your own sweat-stained loincloth look like a rag. The scribe does not speak to you directly. He speaks to his assistant, who unrolls a scroll of papyrus. They are measuring. They use a long cord, knotted at regular intervals, to check the boundaries of your field. They are calculating the expected yield. They know exactly how much grain this land should produce based on the height of the Nile this year. They look at the height of your wheat, nodding and whispering. You stand perfectly still, your hand resting on the neck of your ox. You know the game. If you look too prosperous, they will raise your tax. If you look too poor, they will accuse you of laziness or of hiding grain in underground pits. The tension is a cold cord in your chest. One of the guards pokes at a pile of chaff with his staff, looking for hidden stores. They find nothing. After a few agonizing minutes, the scribe makes a mark on his scroll and moves on to the next plot. You exhale, a long, shuddering breath. You have survived this inspection, but the real test comes at the harvest. If the grain doesn't fill the baskets to the mark they've set, you will be held responsible. The law is simple. The land belongs to the gods and the Pharaoh. You are merely the hands that work it, and the hands must provide. At noon, the world falls silent. Even the birds seem to stop their chatter. You find a small patch of shade beneath a solitary sycamore fig tree at the edge of the field. Your wife arrives, carrying a woven basket on her head. She brings more bread, some dried fish caught from the river's edge, and a few precious green onions. You eat in silence, sharing the food with your son. The onions are sharp and sweet, the best part of the meal. Your wife tells you the news from the village. A neighbor's daughter has been bitten by a cobra. They have taken her to the temple of Serket to see the priests. Another neighbor is mourning because his donkey was taken by a crocodile while drinking at the bank. These are the dangers that hem in your life, the teeth in the water and the fangs in the grass. You look at your wife's hands. They are calloused and stained with the blue dye of the flax she weaves in the evenings. She is as much a farmer as you are. When the harvest begins, she will be there in the heat, winnowing the grain, throwing it into the air so the wind carries away the chaff while the heavy seeds fall back into the baskets. It is a partnership of survival. You touch the small amulet hanging around your neck, a simple clay carving of Bes, the protector of households. You pray, not for riches or for a life of ease, but simply for the strength to keep going. You pray that the hidden ones, the spirits of the fields, will be kind. The afternoon is a blur of weeding. The weeds are relentless, competing with the crops for every drop of water. You bend double, your back a map of aches, pulling the invasive stalks from the mud. You have to be careful. Some of the plants look like grain, but are bitter and useless. As you work, you watch the horizon. The light is changing, turning the yellow desert sands into a deep, bruised purple. The heat begins to lift, replaced by a gentle breeze that ruffles the papyrus reeds along the canal. You hear the sound of a sistrum rattling in the distance. It is a festival day at the local temple, dedicated to Renenutet, the goddess of the harvest. You cannot afford to stop working, but the sound brings a flicker of hope. Tonight, there might be a little extra beer, perhaps even a piece of honey cake if the village elders are feeling generous. You imagine the goddess, depicted as a woman with the head of a cobra, watching over your granary. You imagine her keeping the mice and the rot away. In this world, everything has a spirit. The river isn't just water, it is a god's humors. The sun isn't just fire, it is a god's eye. To live here is to be constantly surrounded by the divine, even when you are covered in dung and mud. As the sun begins to touch the western cliffs, the entrance to the afterlife, you begin to pack up your tools. You clean the flint teeth of your sickle with a piece of leather, ensuring no moisture stays on the wood to rot it. You lead the oxen back toward the village, their bells clinking softly in the twilight. The air is cooler now, and the sky is a riot of orange and pink. You pass other farmers, men you have known since you were a child. You exchange nods but few words. Everyone is tired. The exhaustion is deep, settling into the marrow of your bones. Returning to the village, you see the smoke from dozens of small cooking fires rising into the still air. The village is a maze of narrow alleys and low walls, designed to trap the cool air and keep out the desert wind. You reach your home, a modest structure of sun-dried brick. Inside, it is dark and smells of wood smoke and incense. Your youngest daughter runs to meet you, clutching a small clay doll. For a moment, the weight of the taxes and the fear of the river vanish. You lift her up, her laughter a bright silver sound in the dim room. Dinner is a repeat of lunch, but with the addition of a few lentils and a small bowl of dates. You sit on the roof of your house, where the air is freshest. Above you, the stars are beginning to pierce the velvet sky. You look toward the north, where the great river flows toward the sea. You think about the cycle of your life. Your father did this, and his father before him, all the way back to the time of the first kings who united the two lands. You are a link in a chain that stretches across thousands of years. You are the foundation of everything. Without your grain, the priests cannot perform the rituals. Without your grain, the armies cannot march. Without your grain, the pharaoh cannot maintain the ma'at, the divine balance of the universe. But the balance is fragile. You think about the low Nile stories the old men tell, years when the river didn't rise, when the earth cracked and the children cried from hunger. You shudder and touch the wall of your house. It is warm, holding the heat of the day. You find yourself thinking about your own tomb. It will be nothing like the stone mountains of the kings. It will be a simple pit in the sand, on the edge of the desert where the water doesn't reach. You hope to be buried with your sickle, a few beer jars, and perhaps a small loaf of bread. You hope that when you reach the hall of judgment, your heart will be as light as a feather. You have not stolen from your neighbor. You have not diverted water from another man's channel. You have worked the land as the gods intended. The night deepens, and the sounds of the village fade. The barking of a distant dog, the rustle of the wind in the palms, the rhythmic lap of the river against the bank. You lie down on your reed mat, your body finally surrendering to the fatigue. Your muscles throb, a dull, pulsing reminder of the thousands of gallons of water you moved today. But as you drift toward sleep, you feel a sense of profound connection. You are not just a man, you are a part of the earth itself. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again. Tomorrow, the shaduf will wait for you. Tomorrow, you will continue the eternal work of keeping Egypt alive. You close your eyes, and in your dreams, the fields are always green, the river is always full, and the scribe's papyrus is empty of debts. You are a farmer of the Nile, the heartbeat of the oldest civilization on earth. And though the world may forget your name, it will never forget the monuments your bread built. The river flows on, silent and eternal, carrying the dreams of 1,000 generations into the dark. You sleep, for the dawn comes early, and the happy waits for no man. The first light of the next day begins as a mere suggestion, a thinning of the darkness over the eastern cliffs. You are awake before the first rooster crows, your body acting on a clock set by the seasons rather than the sun. Your joints are stiff, a legacy of years spent stooped over the soil. But you move with a practiced efficiency. You don't need light to find your way. You know every crack in the mud walls, every uneven patch of the floor. As you step outside, the air is surprisingly cold. The desert loses its heat quickly, and a low mist hangs over the irrigation ditches, making the world look ghostly and unformed. This is the hour of the hidden gods, the time when the boundaries between the world of the living and the world of the dead are at their thinnest. You walk toward the river to perform your morning ablutions, splashing the cold Nile water over your face and chest. It shocks the last of the sleep from your system. Today is a day of transition. The wheat is nearly ready for the final push before the harvest, but the flax needs attention. Flax is a temperamental crop, but it is your only hope for a little extra trade. If the fibers are long and fine, your wife can weave linen that might fetch a copper piece or a new ceramic jar at the market. You spend the early hours moving between the rows, pulling the weeds that threaten to choke the delicate blue flowers. By mid-morning, the village is a hive of activity. You see the local potter at his wheel, his hands slick with the same mud that coats your fields. You see the fishermen returning with their nets, their boats low in the water with the weight of perch and catfish. There is a sense of communal effort that defines your existence. No one survives here alone. If your neighbor's irrigation wall breaks, you help him fix it, because tomorrow it might be your wall that crumbles. The heat returns with a vengeance, and with it comes the flies. They are a constant torment, buzzing around your eyes and mouth, drawn to the sweat. You carry a small switch made of horsehair to beat them away, but it is a losing battle. You learn to ignore them, just as you ignore the constant ache in your lower back. You focus on the task at hand. You find a leak in one of the secondary channels, a small breach where the water is seeping into a fallow patch of sand. You quickly knead some fresh mud, mixing it with straw, and plug the hole, tamping it down with your heel. Every drop of water is a drop of life, and you cannot afford to waste a single one. As you work, you watch a group of officials traveling down the river in a large painted galley. The oars rise and fall in perfect unison, splashing the water into silver spray. The officials sit under a linen canopy, fanning themselves. They are likely heading to the regional capital to deliver reports on the grain stores. You wonder what it would be like to sit under such a canopy, to have your food brought to you on a tray, to never have to touch the mud. But the thought is fleeting. You are a man of the earth, and there is a certain dignity in the honesty of your labor. The official's power depends on the grain in your field. Without you, his galley would not move, his canopy would not exist, and his belly would be empty. The afternoon brings a moment of excitement. A hippopotamus has wandered into the lower marshes near the barley fields. These beasts are terrifying, huge, unpredictable, and capable of crushing a man or a crop in seconds. The village men gather with spears and loud rattles, shouting and making a cacophony to drive the animal back toward the main channel of the river. It is a dangerous game. You stand at the edge of the crowd, your heart hammering against your ribs. The hippo bellows, a sound like grinding stones, before finally splashing back into the deep water. You offer a quick prayer of thanks to Sobek, the crocodile god who rules the water. If the gods are angry, they send the beasts. Today, it seems, they are appeased. As the sun begins its descent, you find yourself back at the shaduf. The constant lifting has built a layer of thick, hard callus on your palms, but today a new blister has formed and broken. It stings with every pull of the bucket. You grit your teeth and continue. The crops don't care about your pain, they only care about the water. You find yourself thinking about the afterlife again. The priests say that in the field of reeds, the crops grow taller than a man. The water flows without effort, and there are no scribes to take your share. It sounds like a paradise, but it also sounds exactly like your life here, just without the hardship. It is a testament to your love for this land that your vision of heaven is simply a better version of your farm. The shadows lengthen, stretching across the valley like the fingers of a giant. You finish your final round of watering and head toward the village. On the way, you stop at a small wayside shrine, a simple pile of stones with a carved image of a local deity. You leave a small handful of grain. It's not much, but it's a gesture of respect. You ask for a good harvest, for the health of your children, and for the river to be kind next year. Back at home, the evening meal is a quiet affair. Your son is exhausted, his small hands already showing the signs of the labor that will define his life. You feel a pang of sadness looking at him. You wish he could be a scribe, sitting in a cool temple and learning the mysteries of the hieroglyphs. But the son of a farmer is a farmer, and he will carry on your work just as you carried on your father's. You reach out and touch his shoulder, a rare gesture of affection. He looks up and smiles, and in his eyes you see the same resilience that has kept your people alive for 3,000 years. The night air is filled with the sound of the village settling down. You hear the rhythmic thud of a pestle as someone grinds grain for tomorrow's bread. You hear the low murmur of voices from the next house. You climb up to the roof and look out over the darkened fields. The moon is a silver sickle in the sky, reflecting in the still water of the canals. The land is at peace. You realize that despite the taxes, the heat, the flies, and the back-breaking toil, you are part of something magnificent. You are the steward of the Nile. You are the one who turns the desert into a garden. You are the foundation upon which the greatest kingdom in the world is built. As you lay your head down on your wooden headrest, you feel a sense of completion. You have done your duty to the gods, to the pharaoh, and to your family. You are a farmer of ancient Egypt, and the river will always remember your name, even if the stones do not. The cycle continues. The water rises and falls, and you are there, eternal and unyielding, at the heart of it all. Sleep comes quickly now, a deep and dreamless rest, preparing you for the moment when the sun god Ra begins his journey once more, and the mud calls you back to the field.
If you liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe button for more.